Hello, everyone. My name is Claire Ayo, and I'm a senior educator. And I'm here today. We have a whole hour to discuss a very fun project called the temperature quilt. I don't know if you've heard about temperature quilts. I've started seeing them for a couple of years now, going through my social media, and I was really intrigued by it and decided that January 1st, one of my New Year's resolution is to start making a temperature quilt for 2025. So if you're in the same mindset, I thought let's do a presentation on how to get ready to create this wonderful project. So behind me is actually a sample I did representing just 3 months of this year, just so I could get my head around it and see how it works. And now that I've done all of the math and all of the hard work, I thought, let's put it up as a project for Michael's. You should be able to download the instructions that it's either right now, I think it's in the comments below, or it was sent to you when you registered. Print it out and keep it safeguarded because you will be needing it throughout the year. And so I'm going to be just going through all of the project today. Remember, again, we keep on forgetting this is being recorded. So as of tomorrow, you'll be able to go back. If something you want to revisit, definitely you can just wait for the recording to be up on Michael's channel. But if you do have a question, if I forgot to mention something, please put it down in the chat, and Monet will be there to relay the information to me so I can answer any of the questions that you have. So let's begin by explaining what a temperature quilt is. So the sample that you have behind me, as I said, it represents a quarter. So what does that mean? So every block that you see behind me, every square represents 1 day. The square itself, the color of that square represents the lowest temperature recorded for that day. And the circle represents the highest temperature for that day. So every day we keep track of the temperatures, the low and the high. We combine them and we it's like a log through a whole year to keep track of the temperature. And I kind of find it to be a nice journey throughout the year of to be able to always follow with one project, work on my 1/4 of an inch, work on my satin stitch, work on the quilting, because this is going to need some quilting at the end. So it's really a journey to evolve and practice my skills while making that one quilt. And at the end of the year, it will be complete, and it will actually give me a whole rendering of my year. Not only the temperatures, but also, because I don't know about you, but I always remember the mood when I'm doing something. So it will also remind me throughout the year what was happening when I was making each of these blocks. So now that I've explained what the temperature quilt is, I'm going to be going through how to make it. So first thing on the second page of the document that you're going to have is a shopping list. So you'll see all of the information is there, but I'm going to go through a few of them. So one thing I want to show you during here is that I actually, when I was testing my project, I was using the Singer Heavy Duty 6700C. I really love that machine. It's becoming my go-to, and I'll show you different stitches that you can do using that machine. So we'll get back to that, but that's the machine I had. Obviously, we need threads. I would say 3 different weights of thread, 50, a 40, and a 60. And your universal needles, depending if you're using a 50 weight thread, you'll be going with a 70 or 80. And if you're going with a 40 weight thread, 80, 90 size needle would be good. You'll also be needing quilting needles for the quilting part of the project. So those are the things to remember. And because we will be piecing and we will be appliquing, you will need either an applique foot or the open toe foot, as well as your 1/4 of an inch foot. So that's what you need for the machine. Now, I also used the Momento digital cutting machine from Singer, which is a 24-inch wide cutting machine. I love it, and in a little, I'll be able to explain to you why it was so useful to make this specific project. So we'll get back to that. So just so you know that I did use the the Singer Momento machine to cut my fabrics. You'll be needing tearaway stabilizer. You will be needing double-sided fusible web. And also, of course, fat quarters. We'll get into that in a little bit. And a steam iron, a pressing surface, and just go through the list. There's a lot to go through. But one thing I do want to mention, because I know that I'm going to have a question once you start reading. I wrote in 38 sandwich bags, but they're actually plastic bags that are sealable, so you can keep your project and make sure that you don't lose, they don't get all mixed up. And I have to say that I also went into a Michael's store not too long ago, and if you want to go into an organizational box, there's a few of them that I found would have been perfect for this project as well. So as we go through the explanation of the project today, you can actually see what fits better your style, your organization system at home, because definitely the key to succeeding in the temperature quilt is to be able to have everything neatly stored as you go through, because it will take a whole year to get that project done. So that's for the project supplies. Now, I'm going to touch base on selecting your fabrics. So obviously, that's going to take a whole bunch to explain, because it's not like any other quilt project where this is how many yardage you're going to need to make this project. Everywhere, depending on where you live, everything can change, but I'm going to try to go through, navigate it so that you can understand it correctly. First thing is that when I was doing the project, I realized, as you can probably see in the back, sometimes in the same day, you're going to have the high temperature and low temperature that end up being the same color. For example, that one right there. So yellow on yellow, if they're both identical colors, you won't really be able to see. You're just going to be seeing a square. So when I started designing the temperature quilt, I went outside the box, of course, and I decided that we're going to be using solid colors for the low temperature, so for the squares. And there's a bunch of solid colors at Michael's. You can really go and choose all your colors that you need. But for the high temperature, I decided that I would go with tone on tone. So texture, you want something to make it be just a little bit different than the bottom part, the solid color. So this is an example: orange solid, orange textured, both available at Michael's. Same thing here. I had a green solid and a green textured. So even if you have a day that falls into the same temperature, at least you're going to see a difference when you're putting them together. So that's for the fabric. But now let's go and try and understand what that means also in terms of temperature range. So if you go here, I have all of these colors that I've placed here. And I think that to make this easier to understand, I'm just going to move to this and show it to you here. So I've decided to go with 8 colors, and I went from warmer to cooler. So you'll see on the left, I went with the deep red, moving into the oranges, yellows, greens, and then going into the cooler side with blues and lavender and purple. So those were my 8 colors that I've chosen. So you have the solids on the top and you have the textured one in the bottom. So how does that work? So, oops, sorry about that. Let me just go back here. And so You need to decide on a temperature range. So basically, um, um, let me try to explain this easily. So where I live, I can go as the temp as it's showing on that slide, I can go from 99°F to -4°F. So for me, when I'm doing my temperature quilt, because I've only chosen 8 colors, I do need to have a little bit over 10 degrees for each color range. So if you live in an area that experiences mild extremes, maybe a 5-degree variance per range will be sufficient. But in my case, like I was saying, a 10-degree is preferable. Or I could keep it at 5, but then increase the number of colors, which could tend to be just a little bit more difficult. But again, sometimes we love challenges, so you can do it. So that's why when people ask me the quantity of fabric I need, well, not only does it depend on the number of fabric you have chosen, but also depends on the temperature distribution, the extremes that you live in. All right. So before I continue, I'm just going to stop sharing and ask Monet if anyone has asked a question so far, or is everything all right? So Monet, if you can just give me a heads up.
I do not have any questions so far. Seems like
Okay,
we're doing
perfect.
good.
All right, I'm glad to hear. So now that we understand the number of colors that we want, and then the range of temperature that we're going to need to choose depending on where we live, let me show you the quantity, how to establish the quantity of fabric that you're going to be needing. So again, we're working into the future. I cannot really know what the temperature is going to be like in my neck of the woods in 2025. However, if I look at 2023 or 2024, I can have a good idea of what the temperature range is going to look like. So that's basically one thing that I did. There are multiple websites that you can find the temperature history in your local area. So I looked at the temperature history in 2023, and so I got an idea of how many days are within each range of temperature that I had set. Okay, so once I had those numbers, I knew how many fat quarters I needed per color. So let me go back to I'm going to go back to sharing so that you can see exactly how that worked out. So let's go here. So with that temperature distribution and the history that I had, I knew that for the lowest temperature from -4 Fahrenheit to 8°F, I only needed 1 fat quarter of the low temperature and none for the high, because there's never been, thank God, it's never been that cold in my area. So how do you figure it out for your area? Basically, if you're following the sizes that are in my pattern, you'll know that a fat quarter will typically yield 20 squares, and a fat quarter will yield 42 circles. So if you have less in terms in the low temperatures, I'm just going to come back and stop sharing here. So if you live in an area that you know you have less than 20 days in that temperature range, you just need 1 fat quarter. Between 21 days and 40 days, then you need 2 fat quarters, and so on and so on. So for each color in the low temperature, calculate 20 days per fat quarters. And then in the circles, it's 42 days per fat quarter. So that's how you can determine before the year gets started to purchase all of those fat quarters and get ready for the year. So, because there's nothing more annoying than, getting into fall or winter and realizing you have no more of those cold temperatures because you've already used them up in January, February, and then you have to find it again, and you always run a chance of not finding the exact match. So that's how I go through the history find the quantities that I need. And then with my Momento cutting machine, I got every square and circle pre-cut. So for the squares, there they are. So basically, here we go. You see that this is my coldest, and I actually created these labels using the Momento cutting machine as well. So the lowest temperature, I have my label, so it's easy for me to see. And every color here that I have made sufficient quantities for my whole year. Now I'm going to use the yellow one because it's easier to see. So let me open this one up and show you what I also got to do with the Momento machine. So not only the Momento helped me cut out all my squares very quickly, but I also designed it so that it would mark my the circle. So because when you're going to be adding your high temperature inside the square, you need to make sure that it's centered. And that is one thing. So if you don't have if you're not able to make the circle to position it, then what I would do in the good old days is I would really just fold this in four, and then just mark this down here. So I would know exactly where my circle is. And then when I would have my high temperature, so the circle, then I would know I would do the same with my circle. I would fold and fold to make sure that I knew where that center was and put the center in the same area. But to avoid all this, to be able to go faster, I simply have the Momento machine create that circle. And to create the circle, for this one, I use the water soluble, but notice that you can also have the heat removal. I wrote them down so it's easier for me. I don't get the colors wrong when I show them during classes. So the pink one is actually, as you can use it to mark, and then you heat set it and the color disappears. So that one could also work as well. I would actually prefer the heat removal one in this project, just because as you're pressing it when you're heat setting these two together, then you know that circle will disappear. But the way I marked them anyways, they will disappear inside the circle if you really position it well. So that's how I got my square cut and ready for the project. All right. And adding those labels that were also made using the Momento. So it's easy, quick reference, easy to keep track. And now for the circles, I had to add my double-sided fusible web underneath the fabric before getting them cut into circles. So again, those were also cut using the Momento. And if you want to have more information on the applique side, how do you make an applique? How do you fuse the double-sided fusible web onto the backing of your fabric? How do you make a satin stitch and all that? I did do a whole 1 hour on how to create the satin stitch and how to do appliques. So you will also find the link to that class below in the comments. All right. So I think that we have all of our squares cut out with the circles in the middle. We've also got for each color, we also have the label for the high temperatures. All of the circles have been cut. So once you get that done, even before January 1st, then you are ready every day of the year. You get that information, what the temperature is like, and you have two choices. So let me first of all, how do you keep track? Let me just put this here. This is part of the class, the file that should have been downloaded, or you should have. This is like in the last pages where you do have the template for the circle, and you also have this data collection. So you can keep track by marking the highs and lows every day for your area. And I would recommend having, if you can have, I'm sorry, the markers like, so with the color coded, so you can also color code each high and each low. I know I need color references. So I actually used, let me show it to you now. This is what I ended up doing for myself, keeping track is I actually had, for each day, I put in the temperature and then I put in the color so that when I was doing the project, I had the color references, so I was sure that I wasn't getting confused. So you have that information on in the file that I've sent. You can also create one on an Excel spreadsheet or just color coded with markers on your paper, whatever is more convenient for you, not a problem. Just find what works for you. So again, every day you keep track of the temperature. And so if you want to, every morning you can be preparing your or at the end of the day or the following day, because you don't know the high of that day until that day is done. But anyways, you can do it on a daily basis, prepare that block, or you can wait at the, if you're working full time, then on Saturday or Sunday, it can be your moment for yourself where you're going to be doing the week's worth of logging, tracking, and then making your square for each day. And so what I'm going to show you now is how to the process of that. So let me show here. I'm going to get this out of the way because I'm starting to be very messy. Sorry. So this is a sample of a few days that I did. So this is one day. So again, we can, to keep track of that, let me show you another thing that I could help you out. Let me go back here and share. So again, this is how I've kept track of all of my, I have all of my circles, all of my squares, they're ready, they're in little bags or in a box, whatever is more convenient for you. And then as your week progresses, I have the highs and the lows, so I know exactly which block to create. Okay, so at the end of the week or whenever I've logged all that information, I'm ready to go to my sewing room. I bring that with me and I can start making my blocks. So this is when I'm going to be fusing them together and using that tearaway stabilizer. So you're going to cut one out of a square the size that you need, and you are going to be positioning your square and the circle that is already fused on top and going to your machine to be doing the applique, the satin stitch on your applique. So again, I mentioned how much I loved using my Singer HD 6700C, and I really loved the different variances I could use on the satin stitch for that machine's particular. So let me show you a little bit there. So with that machine, you will see you have a pullout in the bottom, and the pullout will allow you, oh, you don't really see the pullout. So let me just push this down just a little bit. There we go. So in the pullout, you have a lot of different choices to make. So for example, here I have the satin stitch. Actually, the satin stitch is right here. But then below, I also have stitch number 57 right here, which is the blanket stitch. You also have a very, very thin satin stitch with it, which is the stitch number 4. So let's go back here, and because I always say practice before before going on to the real your real block, and that's another example. So see here, this is, let me make it just a little bit closer. There we go. So this is the stitch number 4 that I was referring to. So it is very, very thin. So you need to, I'm not sure it would be the right design for that project, but you can test it out and see how you feel. And then you have the stitch number 5. So this was at the stitch length of 1 with the width of 4, and then bringing it back down to 0.3. Now, when you're looking at it, I kind of, you see, I felt that it didn't feel full. You can't really see with the, it looks perfect here, but there. Now you can see that it wasn't giving me the fullness that I wanted. So I simply switched to, because this one was a 50 weight thread, and moving to this thread, which is a 40 weight, then it really gave me the design that I wanted. So again, stitch number 5, width of 4, length of 0.3 with a 40 weight thread on top and a 60 weight thread in the bottom. Again, this can all be reviewed in that applique class that I gave earlier this year. And look at this one. This one is the stitch 57 that I was referring to. So it's a blanket stitch. That can also be a lot of fun to create an applique with a blanket stitch. So this is the default. So the width is 3.5 and the length is 2.5. And I decided to play with it and change the width to 2.5. And I actually find it that this, I would love to make my project with that blanket's width and length. So again, go to your machine, play with it, find the right, right thread weight, find the right length and width to give the exact look that you want. You need to test it, and then once you're sure, then you make it onto each and every block as you go along. All right. So let me go back here. You're going to see this is one of the days that I had tested out. And so once your block is done, I want to show you another trick that's really important to keep track of everything. You see in the back, I actually wrote April 6th. So this was April 6th of 2024. And I wrote it down. You can also use the number, but I kind of prefer putting April 6th and doing that for all of my blocks so that when I'm sewing them together, I'm sure that I'm not changing the sequences and I am keeping track of so I know April 5th will need to be beside April 4th. So this will be side by side this way. Let me move out. Okay, and then April 2nd, and this is April 6th, so this is April 3rd. So this is how these need to be sewn together to keep track of the log with the correct dates one beside the other. So once I've prepared a whole row, I can actually put them together and put them in a bag. And that's why you need 38 bags. If you started counting, you're like, okay, 38 bags is too much for just 8 colors. But you see now, for each row that I'm making, I'm putting them in a bag and I can put them together like that. And then I can even start sewing the rows together, but keeping it in that bag, because honestly, there are 365 days in a year. So if you just keep all those squares running loose, you're gonna get very confused. It's gonna get you're gonna procrastinate. You're not gonna want to clean that mess up. So that quilt will never be finished. So if you always keep everything organized throughout the year, every row is in a bag, the rows are sewn, they're still in the bag, and then sew row 1 to row 2 and on, then you are just making things simpler, easier to follow through and complete by the end of the year. So I've kind of went through it. I want to go back to another thing I want to show you here. Let me share. So, because we want to see how do you plan a whole year? So this, we just went through, I showed you, so we're good. This is the sample that is behind me representing a quarter. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 blocks. So you can do 10 days together, sew that row together. and make 1/4, and you can actually do like a 4-patch, having each season each season being one of the patches in the 4-patch. If you're wondering what are those that I don't even know, aubergine color here, those are actually fillers that I use to make sure that I would end up with a perfect, perfect, everything matches. So this was to demonstrate we're starting in January, then this is March, sorry, this is February, and then here we have March, and because, I was missing all these days, I can just put it blank there so that I would have a finished quilt for 1/4. So then again, if you like that concept, you can just create 4, make it a 4-patch, and then you're done for the year. Making it that way also, you could like make every quarter quilted, and then combine them as a quilt as you go, like combine the 4 together, so it's not a big bulky quilt to finish at the end of the year. My other suggestion that you'll see also in the design that in the paper that you have is that I actually created 21 rows, and each row contained 18 days. So again, I still kept those solids in between each month, but that perfectly fits in that size to make a quilt size 63 by 73. So that's just to give you options on what you can do. How will it look at the end of the year? And so this is actually the basic of how to get organized to create the quilt. How to work with again, going from finding the temperatures, getting those ranges, and getting the right amount of fabrics for each color. So I'm gonna open the floor and say if there are any questions, Monet, if you wanna, before I go through some more things, I just wanna make sure that I've kind of answered, people feel confident they can start that temperature quilt in January.
No questions so far. Yeah,
Okay.
we're good.
All right, so by show of hand, who has, like I do, high temperature ranges, like from -40 to 99? If you want to just, so I can have an idea if, and who, so did anyone raise their hand so far? I can't see, I'm sorry.
Yes, we have a couple.
Have a couple, okay.
Yes.
And so, it's really important to, again, make sure that you get the right amount, the range. So again, sorry, let me just backtrack here. I did 8 colors with like a 12-degree temperature range. If you feel, when you're looking at it, it could use a little bit more subtlety, be more subtle, you can definitely go with like various ranges, like a lighter green, a medium green, and a deeper green, just to go like from 8 colors to 24 colors. And so by doing that, you can decrease the temperature range. So if, I was saying, for example, for myself, I had 12 degrees within one color range. Well, if that blue becomes a light blue, medium blue, and dark blue, then the light blue can be 4 degrees, and then the 4 degrees for each color range. So that gives you more option. You just have to make sure that what I would recommend, if you know that you'd like to go more than 8 colors, go to the Michael stores, look at all of the different solids that they have, and decide on the range. How do they fit in? And then see, okay, I won't be able to go with 24, but I can definitely go with 13 colors, and then work on the range through there. So look at again, it's pure math. I love math. So I know it annoys a lot of people. So if I go like -4 to 99, So that means I have 103 degrees to put into my range. So if I have 13 colors, then you say 103 degrees divided by 13, and then you know what is the range that you need to work with the number of degrees in that range. I hope I made myself clear. All right, so now I'm going to show you, because I'm so glad. I was expecting way more questions, so I wasn't sure I would have time to start sewing, but I do want to show a few, like, if you're wondering how did I, let me, I want to show how to do that, because I know it's like, oh, I don't want to go and see, I don't want to wait to have to see another video to see how to do the applique, so I get to do it here. So let me do a quick sample here. Again, it is a messy project because you have a lot of bags and a lot of, well, not that messy, but it just needs a lot of organization. So I'm back here. So I have my low temperature, which is yellow, and I have the high temperature here, which is orange, and I'm gonna peel off that backing, the paper from the back. And here we go. And I'm going to be positioning it in the middle here. Technically, I would heat press it, but you know, this is live and I don't have a pressing mat anything near. So I'm going to go straight to the machine here. So I have it set at the, again, the satin stitch, the zigzag. My length is at 0.3, my width is at 4. And so I'm going to go and show you here. There we go. So I have the open toe foot. I love the open toe foot. It's actually better than the, I prefer it compared to the applique foot, because it's completely open. I can see where I'm going. And in the back, there is a tunnel so that your satin stitch will be able to run smoothly. Sorry, let me get my big fingers out of the way. The satin stitch will be able to run smoothly under under the foot. So that's what you need. If you have been doing satin stitches and you kind of get stuck and you create a bulk of thread in front, that's because you're not using the right foot. You absolutely need something that has that room for that satin stitch to move under. So I have this underneath. Now I have, oh, again, sorry, my big fingers are in the way. So I have a 60 weight thread in the bottom, so it's a thinner thread. So the tension, and I'm bringing the tension down because I want my 40 weight thread to be connecting with my bottom thread underneath, not over. So it's really important that you have a thinner thread in the bottom compared to the top. And you can also play with the tension and reduce it. I have mine at 2, so that I'm sure that it won't, it will not, the bobbin thread will not show up on the top. So I'm going to grab my thread on the top, going to position my foot. I'm going to get ready to sew, so put my fabric underneath with the stabilizer. I'm pressing the button here to, and I should show here, you see, I have the button needle up, needle down. I also can fix if I want to on this machine. Love that feature on that machine. And so I have the needle down. I'm going to bring it back up because I want to grab my thread at first. And I'm sure you're going to be saying, well, why do you want the thread at the first? Didn't you just say that you want that thread to stay in the bottom? I do, but to make sure that I have the correct tension right away, I'm just holding it behind. So let me just put this back down in here. I'm going to hold that thread behind as I'm starting to sew just to make sure that the tension is correct as soon as I start. And now you're gonna see that I'm going to try to keep that needle, let me get a close up here. I'm gonna try to keep that needle as close as possible to the my applique fabric, but still, when it's on the right-hand side, I just want it to be on the background fabric. And then as it's going to the left side, it's eating a lot of that applique fabric here. So it's staying close on the right, inside the fabric, on the background fabric. So this is the whole idea. As I'm sewing, I want that thread on the right to be just in the background fabric and then going into the applique. And every time I need to move a little bit, so to rotate, because it's a circle, we're going to need to rotate. I'm going to make sure that I rotate when my needle is in the background fabric. So this is how we make the side stitch on an applique. So, and you can just touch just press slightly your pedal, and the needle's going to go back up and down. You see, I'm just pressing the pedal, same thing as pressing that button needle up and down function. And so as it's here, then I can raise the foot and rotate just a little bit and continue.
Claire, we did have someone ask a couple questions.
Yes, I'm ready.
They asked, what kind of stabilizer are you using?
Good question. It's actually, I'm just using tearaway stabilizer. So you can touch it and it just tears away. So once you're done, you can tear it away. I can already hear you saying, oh my God, I have to do 365 and tear them away after. So depending on your project, this might be a good one. Water soluble stabilizer might be fun. So then you can just leave it inside the quilt. And once the quilt is all finished, as it goes through its first wash, the stabilizer is going to be completely gone. So it's as you prefer. I don't mind the tearaway for this project because it's really a circle and then you pull it out. It's not that much of a hassle, but it's whatever you prefer, either the tearaway or the water soluble.
And someone also asked, are you matching the thread to the background color?
Good question. In this case, I would not match it to the background color because I want the high temperature to pop out. But again, it is your creation, you can decide, but if you match the bottom, your circle is going to look that much smaller. So I tend to decide to just play with it and have fun. It's another part of the quilt's personality. So I'm going to go with a 40 weight, even variegated thread, just to make that high temperature pop out more. So I tend to think, no, I don't want it to match the bottom because it's going to make the circle be just that much smaller. And if you look at the quilt behind me, it's a good size. I wouldn't want it to feel even reduced at that point. But again, it's a personal preferences. The honest answer, I would say test it and see what do you prefer.
And those were the only two questions for now.
Those were the only two questions. Okay.
And we do have 15 minutes left.
We do have 15 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to try to hurry on up. And it's always when you're on, I should have started that one sooner. So basically what I wanted to do, but I'm not going to continue because it's valuable. So let me just finish this off. Let me go back here and get closer. All right, so another thing, you were mentioning what color should be the thread. Right now, it's kind of a different color. It's orangey to go more with this side. Because if you go with the yellow, because remember I was saying to always make sure that your needle was in the background color. So as you pivot, you're sure to have a nice line on this end. So if you would decide to go with the yellow, the same color of thread as the background, I would actually say, make sure that your needle is on the inside where you're pivoting, because you won't necessarily see that straight line here, but you will see it here, and you will want to make sure that you have a smooth line on this side. So that's the one thing I would say. So again, I gave you, I said you should do that, but someone gave me a good example why you shouldn't, you should be doing the exact opposite. And that's what's so much fun about quilting, is that, you know, there's always an example that proves the exact contrary of what you wanted to do. So basically, once you're done doing all of that circle, you're going to have these pieces of thread. So you're going to be wanting to, I don't have the right needle here, but a self-threading needle, you're going to be using the self-threading needle to take this thread and bring it back underneath. And I will be tying a knot underneath, and then running a little bit into the zigzag here and cutting the thread. So you want to keep just a little bit, tie a knot, keep a little bit more for the beginning and the end, and those will be done underneath. So even though you are pulling that thread from under, you're going to be pulling it back down as close as possible, even within the same hole that it came in, so it will never show up on the top. So that's one thing that I wanted to say, and I'm sure I'm going to remember the other thing I wanted to say with regards to that. But once all of those are done, then you will be sewing your rows together using the 1/4 inch foot. So as you're sewing them, again, the design that I have on my on the project is really meant to be sewing at a 1/4 inch, whether it's slant or regular, it doesn't matter. So obviously you need the 1/4 inch foot to be sewing them together, and to just the whole project should be sewn at the same, like, and that's what, let me go back 1 second. So to make sure that, you know, a lot of people are saying, okay, how do we get those perfect corners for them to connect? The trick is to always be using the same reference. So if you're using if you're using the slant 1/4 inch foot as your beginning, well, keep that consistency throughout your design with the slant 1/4 inch foot. All right, so that's my secret. If, let's say, you're new to quilting and you've never quilted at a 1/4 inch foot at a 1/4 inch, and you want to continue like in your regular sewing at 5/8, I'm going to say, okay, continue at 5/8, but you need to increase that square because it's going to get smaller into the design. So because quilters usually always sew at a 1/4 inch. So if you're new to quilting and you don't have a 1/4 inch foot and you want to do it like you sew everything else at 5/8, you're going to need a bigger square. Okay. And then for the quilting, how to quilt that project. I know it's mind boggling. So what I did with that design there, and you'll see in the picture, is I kind of decided to just play around. So I kind of did a circular motion, just going from one end, circle that way, that way, that way, all the way down, and then all the way back up. And so then, you know, having that circle, and then on the left and the right. So it kind of gave a new design, which I really didn't mind. I actually thought it would be cool. But maybe it's not your thing. Maybe you're not comfortable with curves. So definitely you could do straight lines. You could also stitch in the circle. I kind of wanted those circles to pop out. So that's why I kind of wanted to do that circle, but don't hesitate to go at a 45-degree angle and quilt it that way. If you're going, and that's what I remember now, because if that quilt is strictly wall hanging, never going to be washed, then you can go with a very subtle quilting. You don't even need to do that much of an applique, a thick applique. You can just do it on this one. I just did a simple line here because it was just a wall. I was never going to wash it. if this quilt, you will be putting it in the washer and the dryer, remember that those appliques, the sides are gonna fray. So that's why you need that satin stitch and you need a thicker, that's why I went with a width of 4, because you want to hide the sides that's going to be fraying and you want to make sure that those circles stay where they are. So if you are doing something that's going to be used and is going to be washed, with your 1/4 inch, with your satin stitch all around the circles, don't hesitate to go and do those 45-degree angle quilting everywhere. It's just going to help you solidify the project. So I think I've went through all the questions I had, Monet. If there's any other questions coming up, please let me know.
I am not seeing any more questions.
Okay. So I just want to show of thumbs. Who's with me doing that temperature quilt for 2025? Are there anyone going?
Yes, we do have some giving a thumbs up.
Yes, all right. So again, remember that this is going to be on the Michael's page, a channel, a YouTube channel as of tomorrow, so you can keep track and go back if there's anything that you need to review. And make sure that you print out that file, that document, and you keep it close hand. And I'm wishing you a very fun 2025 and a gorgeous temperature quilt at the end. Thank you for watching.